Hola, muy buenos días a todos. Vamos a dar un minutito más para que se conecten más personas y comenzamos con el primer webinar de este día. Pues yo creo que vamos a dar inicio. Muchísimas gracias por las personas que nos acompañan. Seguramente se van a estar uniendo más personas a lo largo de esta sesión. Antes de platicarles de qué va a tratar este tema, de presentar a nuestro ponente del día de hoy, por favor, un saludo por parte de la Embajada de Italia y de la Cámara Italiana.
Soy Luigi De Chiara, embajador de Italia en México. Soy muy feliz de presentar Encuentro Creativo, una producción de la Cámara de Comercio Italiana en México con la Embajada de Italia. En México hay un potencial de talento creativo que me parece no logra salir de sus fronteras con la presentación de la oferta formativa de esas instituciones académicas en el campo de las industrias creativas italianas. Queremos ofrecer no solo la posibilidad de mejorarse de un punto de vista técnico, sino también de saber dónde van las tendencias, cómo se ha construido el éxito del Made in Italy, sobre todo en el sector del estilo de vida.
Es un evento muy importante, Encuentro Creativo, porque da la oportunidad a los estudiantes mexicanos egresados de universidades o de institutos académicos de conocer la oferta educativa que hay para cursos de posgrado en el campo del diseño, de la moda y de las artes gráficas.
Así que durante estas 2 semanas de Encuentro Creativo van a poder encontrar tips y conocer acerca de las mejores universidades y institutos italianos. Van a poder conocer a embajadores, a ponentes que están trabajando en la industria, que son también académicos de estas universidades. La finalidad es que disfruten de Italia, que conozcan Italia a través de estos webinars y seminarios y que se aventuren a vivir en Italia y vivir una experiencia llena de conocimiento, de sabiduría y de diseño y de moda. Espero que lo disfruten y muchísimas gracias.
Ok, pues aquí las palabras. ¿Sí me escuchan, verdad? Por ahí, equipo, ¿sí me escuchan?
Sin problema.
Estoy teniendo un poco de problemas de
Fariba.
conexión.
Hola Fariba, ¿tú nos escuchas?
Ah, ¿no me escuchan?
Nosotros sí te escuchamos muy bien.
Sí se escucha.
Ah, perdón, es que, ok, ya los escucho, ok, perdón, una disculpa. Pues el día de hoy vamos a estar hablando pues del sector automotriz. Seguramente hay muchísimos apasionados de este tema y sobre todo en específico pues esta industria tan grande que es muy importante en Italia con tantas marcas de lujo que conocemos, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Maserati, etcétera. Pues aquí también en México es un sector muy, muy importante. Estaremos platicando acerca, el título es Italian Car Design, Historical Inspirations and Future Perspectives. Y pues hoy nos acompaña un ponente especialista en este sector, Michele Albera. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí, que representa el Instituto YET, que seguramente todos conocen y que ya han hecho algunas ponencias durante estas 2 semanas. Instituto Europeo de Diseño, que incluso no solamente está en Italia, sino también en España. Y que es parte de este encuentro creativo, el cual cuenta con una red internacional de educación creada en Italia en 1966, difunde la cultura y la innovación en el ámbito del diseño, la moda, las artes visuales, la comunicación y gestión de las industrias creativas. Durante más de 50 años, YET ha desarrollado una propuesta educativa de gran calidad y alta empleabilidad. Y hoy, aparte, es un día muy movido. Esta sesión va a ser muy movida porque, bueno, además, quiero recordarles que YET está ofreciendo una beca al 100% y esto lo van a poder encontrar en nuestra página web, que seguramente ya han estado visitando, y ahí vienen todas las bases para poder ganarse esta beca al 100%. Por favor, no la dejen de aprovechar, es una oportunidad única. Tienen que haber sido participado el 50% de las actividades, entonces espero que lo hayan hecho, ese es uno de los requisitos. Por ahí vamos a estar escuchando a un embajador que estudió en YET para que nos platique su experiencia y también vamos a tener una rifa al final de esta sesión. Pues bien, no me queda más que presentar a Michele Albera, que tiene un currículum muy, muy interesante, y dejarle la palabra. Él es Project Manager y Coordinador de Diseño en YET, en la sede de Milán. Él pues ha cultivado una gran pasión por el mundo del diseño y el automóvil que le permitió a Michele variar entre las áreas del diseño y la difusión del automóvil. Su objetivo se centra en la coordinación de personas para lograr los mejores resultados dentro de las empresas en términos de calidad e innovación. Michele se ha desarrollado como coordinador de licenciatura y máster en diseño de transporte en YET de Turín, de la ciudad de Turín. Además, es miembro del Observatorio sulla Mobilità, Observatorio de la Movilidad de ADI Design. Este ADI Design es una asociación para el diseño industrial que reúne proyectistas, a empresarios, a investigadores, a académicos, a críticos y a periodistas que se unen pues, para hacer un análisis sobre el diseño de este gran sector. Dicho instituto es protagonista del desarrollo de diseño industrial como fenómeno cultural y económico. También jefe de proyecto de Mula, que es la primera de Mula de Due Electron, que esta es una de las primeras motocicletas totalmente eléctricas, presentada en una exposición muy importante que se lleva a cabo en Milán y creo que va a ser ahora en noviembre, que se llama ICMA 2019, donde pues se ve todo el mundo de las 2 ruedas. Albera también es fundador de Map Design, estudio y diseñador y consultor para Bike Dynamics ETD, y responsable del contenido cultural y temporal de la exhibición de Auto Designer en JET, Matilde y Borromé de Silva. Dicho esto, pues es un experto en este ámbito y pues ya yo creo que aquí tenemos muchos espectadores que son amantes apasionados de las 2 ruedas. Entonces, por favor, Michele, adelante y bienvenido, y estaremos con el equipo de la cámara y de Trendo.mx en una sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Por favor, chicos, si tienen alguna duda, quieren escribir en el chat, interrumpir, por favor, para que sea más dinámico. Y pues, Michele, a ti la palabra.
Gracias a todos. Estoy muy contento de estar con vosotros. I'm going to speak English because you know my Spanish is very basic, but I will try to tell you a little bit story. Thank you for the introduction. It is strange because also hearing all the things I've done, it's quite exciting because all that I've done was driven by the passion for the automobile. And so I have to say that my job is also my hobby. It's something that I love to do, and I always wanted to do this. It's a difficult job, very competitive, but right now I'm also given the role of directing the School of Transportation Design area of IED Torino. And so I have to create new designers to join the huge companies that everybody knows around the world. For today, I prepared a little presentation, which is, I would say, a small story about Italian design. You know that usually Italian design is very much related to sports car. I saw, for example, in your videos, there were a lot of Ferrari logos on the steering wheels. And today we're not going to talk about Ferrari, but we're going to talk about another traditional and important brand of Italy, still related to sportiness, that is Lamborghini. I used to have some collaborations in the past with the brand, both personal, while I was in the studio, through also it was already a Volkswagen Group, and more recently also with the school. So it's a brand that also personally I studied a lot. And I think that today I'm gonna tell you a story about how this brand really changed how we imagine and how we perceive the sports cars. I don't know if you hear me well. I hope that the connection is good. Today I am inside one of the teaching rooms of ID because I'm in between lessons. Actually, there is a big brand downstairs checking our students' thesis of the master. I can say actually, because we already communicated, it's Alpine brand. So as soon as we finish, I will be going down again and checking what my students presented to the brand. We have a lot of connections with worldwide brands. So even if we are in Turin or Torino, like we say in Italian, we work with the really international brands. And today I try to share the screen. Please let me know if you see. I hope that everybody can see this.
We can see it perfectly.
Okay, thank you very much. Like has been said, you can interrupt me, you can stop me. Not only I don't get offended, but I'm more happy to answer your questions than actually talking by myself. I like a lot the interaction. Also at school, something that I appreciate. Today, I wanted to tell you probably for me the most interesting and most exciting story about car design that happened in Italy. It's really when the rules got broken, when we had really a turning point. And it's been done in Torino by very young guys that really believed that there were no rules in car design and they wanted to achieve new goals and new languages. So this is an old story, but like every old story needs to teach us where to look for the future. And I can say that probably if you think about Lamborghini, the first thing that comes to your mind is this wedgy object, very aggressive, the sportiness, this appeal, this aggressiveness that has been decided here in Torino. You know, the Lamborghini is not in Torino, Lamborghini is in Sant'Agata Bolognese, but the styling of almost every Lamborghini that you liked through the years, I think that if you like cars, especially sports cars, you probably love at least one or two Lamborghinis. They are, the majority of them, especially from the beginning, were all designed in Torino. Torino was Turin was where all the coach builders were and all the design centers were. So even the Ferraris have been designed by Pininfarina in Torino. The Lamborghinis have been designed by Bertone in Torino. So even if the brands were from Modena, Maranello, or the Maseratis, for example, in Bologna, have been designed by Pininfarina or other coach builders, the majority of them has been designed in my city. And this is why also we had opened here in Torino a school which is specific about car design. And if I made this Italian car design, historical inspirations and future perspective, aka how design changed the world in 1971. I wanted to explain you why. As I said, this is a moment in which a lot of things happened. 1971. We have a lot of new proposals, new languages, new brands, new coach builders, new ideas, new designs that still nowadays are perceived as actual. And this happened really, really in one specific year, very quickly. And this was the moment of the turning point. We have to check what happened before. This was 1966. I think that if you love cars, you absolutely know this one, which is the Lamborghini Miura. And this is what Lamborghini was before going to the Countach. So before going to the language that is still used on cars like the Aventador, still used on cars like the Huracan, still used also on cars like the Siano or the new Countach, and we will talk about that. So this was what the design of Bertone and the language of Bertone, the coach builder, had created for Lamborghini. Lamborghini was a newborn brand at the time. Almost nobody knew it. It was like when a few years ago, for example, just to name a more recent brand, when Pagani started producing cars, it was all new. And they actually stated their importance through two things. Of course, a great mechanical engineering and high performance, but also through a groundbreaking design. Well, for a lot of passionate about car design, the Miura is the most beautiful car ever. I personally don't agree. I think that it's important. A lot of things have been defined by the Miura or redefined by the Miura, but I don't think it's the most important or the most beautiful car in the world. I always look at the innovation as I would say like a synonym of design. For me, design has to be always related to innovation, to new points of view, to new perspectives. And the Miura was fantastic. It was a mid-engine car, very, very well proportioned, that looked amazing, but wasn't something totally new. A lot of elements already have been introduced by cars like the Testudo or, I don't know, other cars like the Bizzarrini that existed before. Or even, we could say, even before, cars like Jaguar, Ferrari, or Porsche already had some ideas related to a certain layout, especially related to the races. But this one was designed for the road, was designed just for the audience. This was not a sports car design coming from the competitions and later adapted to a road version. So we could say, yes, by a certain point of view, it was already innovative. But we could say that it still looked more or less like the cars of the 60s were designed. It is amazing, and trust me, I would love to have one. But it's not something that came from another planet like what happened before. So, in 1966, Lamborghini presented this car designed by Bertone. What happened the year before? The year before, Lamborghini was a brand, a mechanical brand, we could say. They didn't have a style center inside the Lamborghini brand until 10 years ago, only 10 years ago. And for example, Ferrari had it only 11 years ago, before all this classic Italian sports brand and even Maserati that they did in 2014, they didn't have a style center inside. So they didn't do their design, they did only the mechanics. This is what Lamborghini presented in 1965, which means the year after the final presentation of the Miura. at the Salone or Motor Show of Turin. The Motor Show of Turin right now is not existing anymore, but it was very important. It was one of the three great, with Geneva that is still existing, not this year again, but they say they're coming back next year, and the Paris one. So they were the three most important and famous, especially in Europe. And look, right now it would be crazy for a company to present a car just like this, without a dress, without a coach building, without a bodywork, without anything that we can define design. They presented what? A chassis, a rolling chassis, because it was a marching chassis, an engine. It was already a V12 engine, so huge engine, like I say, it's define the sportiness. It's really a must of the sports cars, and one seater and just the wheels. That's it. This is what was the only interest of Lamborghini. They didn't have a designer yet, and they didn't have a co-worker or a coach builder to co-work with. They came to Torino also to look for designers and coach builders, like all the coach builders that existed in Turin, like Bertone, like Pininfarina, Vignale, Michelotti, you name it, Monterosa, Moretti. We really had a lot of coach builders. You can also think about the other Italian famous coach builders like Zagato, like Turin Superleggera, or like Scaglietti. Well, actually, they came to Torino to look for somebody to design the car that could be the most powerful car, road legal car in the world. And of course, a lot of coach builders went there and they tried to convince Ferruccio Lamborghini, who was the founder of the brand, to give them the possibility to design the car. And he refused a lot of offers, even from Pininfarina, even from the big ones. Why? Because all of them worked with their enemies. Because probably not so many of you know, but Lamborghini was born because of the personal hate between Ferruccio Lamborghini and Enzo Ferrari. Because while the first one was still building tractors, he had a meeting with Enzo Ferrari and he suggested him a way to improve the mechanical parts of two of his Ferraris, especially the gearbox. And Enzo Ferrari was mad about this suggestion from somebody who was building tractors. And he said, "What can you teach me? That you only can produce tractors." And Ferruccio Lamborghini was so mad about this, so full of anger that he decided, well, I'm gonna create a car brand that can actually perform better than any Ferrari. And Ferrari at the time was the winner of Le Mans, was I would say really the most powerful and respected brand, especially in the sports world, that existed. So the year after, they presented this one. We have to say there was a model that they released before, because before the Miura, Lamborghini tried to produce a car. It was, we could say, a complete failure. I think, how many of you know Lamborghini? I think everybody knew the Lamborghini brand, correct me if I'm wrong. But how many of you knew this car? This car is the 350 GT. Probably nobody. Well, actually, this is the first Lamborghini ever. It is already a V12 engine, so very powerful engine. And this is from 1963. I have to tell you, it looks incredibly old, incredibly old. It looks like a car from the 50s. It looks like, look at this wedgy angled shape in the rear, all these chromy components. It looks weird somehow. And we cannot think about anything farther from the image of Lamborghini than this one. I could say that, yes, nothing of this car has been remembered or kept on in the history of Lamborghini. And we have to say there is a reason why. It was an economical failure. First of all, the design language was too old and it didn't communicate the power of the mechanics. So it was important for Lamborghini to have a new design approach, a new language. I want to go back to here. This is what happened 3 years later. Look, it is sharp, it is fluent, it is kind of sexy, it is appealing, it is very nice. It is also young. It still looks new, even if it's from the 60s, but this one looked old from the beginning. So they knew they had to change. First of all, the partner as designer and the coach builder. But I have to say, probably you think that this designer wasn't good enough. Probably he was a very young guy or an unexperienced guy or somebody who was too old for time. No, actually, this one has been designed by a guy called Franco Scaglione. Like I wrote here. I don't know if you can see. Franco Scaglione was one of the greatest designers ever. He designed the Alfa 33 Stradale, Alfa 33 Stradale. I think that if you're passionate about cars, you surely know the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale is still the reference of every design of Alfa Romeo nowadays. And he designed the BAT series, the Berlinetta Aerodinamica Tecnica Speciale. So he really designed a lot of wonderful cars that made the history of the automobile. But in this case, I think he designed the wrong car. And I have to say, this is very important. A car with a good engine, a car with a good mechanics, but with the wrong design can be a total failure, because the first thing that people perceive is design. People fall in love at first sight with automobiles. And this is very important, something that we don't have to forget. I think that if you own a car, it's because you went to a showroom and you decided, well, I'm in love with this one, I want this one. It's something I would be proud of driving around. And mistaking and having problems during the design phase can lead to an economical failure. So this is how design is important, even nowadays. Well, actually, what happens? We go to 1965. They have this new layout with this mid-engine solution that was new for, if it wasn't for the racing. And at one point, one guy arrives, and he was a very humble and silent guy from Turin called Nuccio Bertone. As you understood from the name, he was the owner of the Bertone coach builder. And he meets this guy, as I told you, he was a producer of tractors, meets this guy with a very great personality. He was screaming, shouting, sometimes swearing, and they get along from the first moment. And there is this sentence, when they meet, Nuccio Bertone tells Ferruccio Lamborghini, I am the one who can build the shoe to your feet, to your foot, because the others are not able. Well, this wasn't the reason why Ferruccio Lamborghini was convinced. He was convinced by a simple fact. The simple fact was that Bertone brand never worked with Ferrari before. Unlike Lamborghini, unlike Touring Superleggera, unlike all the others that went to him, and unlike Vignale, for example. And he said, yes, the only important thing is that you never work with Ferrari. And they started this collaboration that lasted really a lot. Well, what was the problem? Nuccio Bertone had a coach builder, but he had no designers. He had no designers. At the time, don't think about the design studios that we have nowadays for the automobile. think about that there was one designer for each coach builder. Before, there was a guy that you probably know is the guy here. Somebody might recognize him. I don't know if you can see him. Tell me if you can see the picture, maybe.
We can see it perfectly. We're just waiting to see
Okay.
if someone knows who he is.
Think about the most famous car designer in the world, probably in history. Is called Giorgetto. Maybe some of you know the name. It's also written here. Okay, I tell you, it is Giugiaro. Okay, he is called Giorgetto Giugiaro. He's still alive. He's from 1938, but still alive. And I would say that he's still working with this new coach builder, which is called GFG. Well, actually, he just left Bertone after being the only designer of Bertone for a few years. Well, actually, when Nuccio Bertone got the chance to design the Miura, Giugiaro was away. He already left to go to Ghia, and later he will be starting his company that is called Untitled Design. I think that a lot of you know Untitled Design now. We know it's part of the Volkswagen Group. It is a coach builder and a design house. And he had to find a designer. Well, actually, he had 4 months to find a designer, design the car, build the car, and also make the first working prototype, not just like we do nowadays for the motor show, that we show just a maquette or just a not moving vehicle. He had really to design the full car and make it work. He remembered that 3 years earlier, he met a guy that he wanted to hire, called Marcello Gandini, like it's written here. He's the guy here when he was very young. They had the same age. They were from 1938. They are from 1938. And when he left, when Giugiaro left, they both were 26. So very young, but Giugiaro was already a superstar because he started working at 17 in Fiat Style Center. And there was already existing. And so what happened? He calls this Marcello Gandini, but Marcello Gandini also never designed a full car. He made some preparations for the racings, changing a little bit of details for a small coach builder in Milan called Marazzi, but he never designed a full car. Well, no pressure. They had to design the most powerful car in the world to kick Ferrari ass, to speak frankly. That had to be beautiful, with a new designer with no experience in 4 months, and they had to make it run and work perfectly. What happened? Well, I would say not bad for a first attempt, also for 4 months. Right now, if you know, our design time is from 4 to 5 years to design one car. They design a full car in 4 months. I would say that this one was released in 1966, but the production of the first working prototype finished on the Christmas Day of 1965. And I think it's kind of a sign of destiny, because it is like a Christmas present, because it could have defined the failure of a brand like Lamborghini, and even the crisis of a coach builder like Bertone. They didn't know if they had somebody as good as Giugiaro to step on and take his place. Giugiaro already designed for them cars like Alfa Romeo, Fiat, you name it, really, a lot of Alfa Romeo. And they had this young guy with no experience. I think that it was really a masterpiece of proportion. Look how fluent is the design, how continuous, how well proportioned, and how elegant it was, even keeping a certain approach to sportiness. Yes, we could say that already cars like the Ford GT40 existed, but this one was a road legal car designed to be road legal, not to participate to any competition. Another thing, Ferruccio Lamborghini didn't want his cars to participate to any car race. Why? Well, I would say probably because he was too afraid of losing against Ferrari. But he made the most powerful road legal cars and the fastest road legal cars in the world. And here we say that there was a great experience of Marcello Gandini and knowledge of mechanics that led him to have such a great design. I would say that Stanzani was the engineer that designed this one, worked really well with Gandini because they both had a great understanding of mechanics. As you see, the layout with this mid-engine transversal, mid-engine V12 was, we could say, the epitome of this sports car. But what happened? Well, this car becomes a success of styling. Everybody likes it. People are buying it, even famous people, Frank Sinatra, really a lot of actors were buying it. And it was from an unknown brand that really almost not existed before. And it's powerful and it's the fastest car in the world. So they said, let's run. Nowadays, we would say, okay, we did it, we succeeded, let's keep on doing the same thing. Well, what happened? I want to show you a little bit the car movement. Okay. From a newborn brand, they became a great reality. And it was done by really young people. Probably because they were young, they were a little bit maybe unexperienced and naive, and they had the courage to change the world with this new design. And also they were so young and crazy that they decided to, yes, we made a masterpiece and now we throw everything away. Right now, it would be unthinkable. Brands keep on producing the same thing on and on and on. Think about what is happening with some brands that keep on almost recreating the same car in a new version. Think about the Golf. Yes, it's actually more or less the same car with an evolution from the last 45 years. And they decided, yes, we made a masterpiece, it's fantastic, it works, people love it, it's selling a lot, and then they started designing completely different cars. They were looking for another identity. They said, okay, the car is good, but almost everybody can do something which can be an Italian sports car. We want to be different from the others. So to look for an identity, it was very useful to go through what is called the concept car. And the Marzal was the first concept car by Lamborghini, and it was released between the Miura and what came later, the Marzal. It was a shooting brake, so a totally different typology of car. This was also, I would say, really crazy design. Look at these hexagons, look at the interiors, these silver interiors. Look at these glass windows and the seagull doors. And it was still designed by Marcello Gandini, and still Stanzani engineering. So still 2 people only were working on this cars, really simple and fast. But also Gandini at the same time was looking for a new language. He designed in 1968 the first wedge design car. What is a wedge design? It's a car that has just one continuous line that goes from the front to the tail. Okay, from the hood, the bonnet, to the tail, to the end of the car, to the rear end. And this was, even if it doesn't look at all like this, it was an Alfa Romeo. It was an Alfa Romeo with a mid-engine. I would say that here we have really the beginning of experimenting the design of the mid-engine supercars. Look at the scissor doors. Look at this aggressiveness. Look at this color also that was strange for the time. And I would say that here Alfa Romeo lost the chance to design really this first supercar in the world. It has everything that right now it's a supercar must, like cars like Koenigsegg or I don't know, we rename Pagani or Ferrari, okay? The scissor doors, the Lamborghinis, of course, and this wedge shape. Look also at the intakes to cool down the engine that was here. It's almost hidden inside. These were pictures of the time. Look also at the fact that they wanted to look also futuristic with the models that looked with coming from outer space with the helmets and stuff. So they were experimenting, but I would say experimenting in a very futuristic way, in a very sci-fi or space era way. Remember that the man was going to the moon the year after, so there was a lot of interest for space, adventure, sci-fi. And in 1970, I think that Gandini reached probably the essential shape that became really the Lamborghini DNA. And again, this was for another brand that didn't pick this one. They didn't want to produce this one. Yes, they produced another car called Stratos, but the Stratos Zero that was designed for Lancia, even without their approval, because it was, at the time, it was possible for coach builders to build prototypes without asking the brand. But I think that this one was really something unseen. First of all, the windshield is the door. You get inside from that. You step on the front where is a mat where you can step on. There are sliding windows that slide horizontal. The engine is just behind the back of the driver. I don't know if you ever had the chance to see this car, but trust me, it's outstanding and still nowadays something untouched. And in very small proportions, it was based on a car called full VHF, and the full VHF had only the belt line here. So here they had the greenhouse. So the car was way taller. This one was really minimal and small. And Alfa Romeo didn't catch the opportunity. Lancia didn't catch the opportunity. Then he proposed a prototype to Lamborghini called the Countach. It was 1971. And for me, this is where the things changed. Nobody believed that this could be really the new successor to the Miura, because the people didn't like it. And really people at the beginning didn't like this design. And it took 3 years for them to go from the prototype to the market version, to the, I would say, to the production version. It was okay, slightly different. This was even a little more simpler. This one has been destroyed and has been rebuilt recently by Lamborghini. Look at the single volume that was already experimented. Look at the shapes the look futuristic. It looked like really like a flying saucer, something from another dimension or from outer space. And even the wheel arch wasn't a normal wheel arch, it was dynamic. Everything in this car is designed to look like a sharp knife. And this is what they wanted to communicate. When Ferruccio Lamborghini sees this one, he said, okay, this is it. Lamborghini will become this one. We forget this one, that was a masterpiece. It's too sweet, it's something that anybody can do. And we go to this one. At the beginning, people didn't like this one. But if you think about it, right now, Lamborghini is still based on this design from 1971. This was crazy. He didn't even have the rear mirrors. He had a periscope here. So you look through a periscope. It was really something unseen. Please tell me if you have any questions, or also if you understand my pronunciation in English or my English. Okay, I try to speak slowly so everybody can understand. Tell me, is everything okay? Can you...
Yes, everything is okay. So we have a couple of questions, but maybe you can finish the whole presentation and then we go on a question round.
I wanted to show you just one thing. These are the two cars. Look at the difference. Okay, this was the same platform with the same engine. They turned the engine, because this was transverse, into a longitudinal engine. And I wanted to show you this. If the wheels are in the same position, look at what happened. This is the A pillar, okay? So this is the greenhouse. And this is the A pillar position of the countach, which is on the wheel. It's exactly how we design the supercars nowadays. Look at them, it's completely the opposite vision. And it's incredible that this happened only in 5 years and after a huge success of the Miura. And look also at the language. This one is sweet, it's very Italian, very Mediterranean. This one looks like, I will say, kind of threatening when it arrives, okay? They also said, even Ferrari can design something like this. We are not interested. And so this is how they did it. The UFO, I would say the UFO landed on Earth, the flying saucer. This is the scheme that explains why. This was really a new layout with the back of the driver close to the engine. And really this one line that was embodying everything. And at the beginning, the people didn't like this design. They said, no, this wedge design is too aggressive, it's vulgar. We don't like it, we want, again, the Miura. Then after a while, what happened? They started all appreciating. It started to be understood. And it started to be really the way to design the sports car, even for the competitors. It's like what happens sometimes in fashion design world, when something very strange is introduced at the beginning. For us, it's too strange, we don't like it, then we get used to it. And we start seeing that also on the road, on the streets, and people start wearing that. The same thing happened with this automobile. Look for also what happened with the competitors. I have to say, this is the Bizzarrini Manta, this is a Vauxhall, this is the Ferrari Mythos, this is the Boomerang Maserati, this is Audi, this is a Porsche, for example, the Porsche Tapiro. Even Porsche tried to do this. And this is the Modulo. So even the enemies like Ferraris, this is the Alfa Romeo Navajo. Even the worst competitors and enemies, I would say, of Lamborghini started following the leader, because that thing was unexpected and unseen. And even Giugiaro, that was always in competition with Gandini, designed cars like the Bizzarrini Manta or the Boomerang, because they were born in the Tapiro also. All the three of them have been designed by Giugiaro. Aston Martin did it, okay? So it's strange, but this thing that at the beginning nobody believed in and everybody hated became really the thing. And there was this craze about the wedge shape. Everybody wanted to have a wedge shape, even Ford, for example, with the coin. And what happened again? We have to say that Lamborghini, I wanted to show you the DNA of Lamborghini. This is a sketch by Mitja Borger, the design director of Lamborghini right now. He said that the DNA of Lamborghini, like it says here, starts from the Countach. Then we have the Diablo, the Murcielago, and the Aventador, okay? As you can see, it's the same here with the pictures. Look at the difference between the Miura, that looks like something from another brand, another thing, and these others that still kept the same shape. But what happened? He really changed the rules. He changed the language. And everybody right now is designing, especially that. And also, I could say that right now we are looking for a language to define not the sports car, because the sports car have been defined, but to define the electric sports car. I would say that we are too conservative about electric sports cars. Right now, we are having a cooperation with this brand, which is a Spanish brand, Hispano-Suiza. We had a collaboration with Automobili Pininfarina. But if you look at this car, for example, it looks more or less like a Ferrari without the intakes. And I don't think that it's there. I think that we need to be more brave, like they were brave when they decided to throw success, glory, and money away and risk everything to achieve what later is still, after 60 years, the identity of Lamborghini. But there was a case recently, as you saw, 2021, they introduced the new Countach. And the past nowadays is seen as the future. Well, what happened? They took the Sian, they changed some elements, and they said it's the new Countach. Of course, the design is inspired to the Countach, the original Countach, which is here, okay? But it lacks of the originality, it lacks of the essence of the project. It's not groundbreaking. And it is just a copy. It is just, again, repeating and trying to repeat something that was important because it was unique. It's like when you try to copy the Mona Lisa, okay? You can be a great painter, make an exact copy of it, but it's just a copy. So what happened? Even Marcello Gandini says that this time the UFO, the flying saucer, didn't land on Earth. To repeat a model of the past that represents, in my opinion, the negation of the founding principles of my work. Okay, so the Countach was amazing because it was done for the first time. It was unseen, it was really something unpredictable. I have to say that this is what design should do. Design should look forward and not to be nostalgic. And right now we have a lot of problems because we want to, companies want to be sure about selling, so they keep on doing the same thing. But I would say a good design, even if it's risky, always pays in the end. It takes time to be accepted. I'm not lying. It takes time like it took for the Countach. But in the end, I think that it can create masterpieces like the Countach. Well, I want to end up a little bit. First of all, I stopped this part when I stopped. I hope I didn't bore you too much, because usually I'm a teacher of history of the automobile. I used to work for the Museum of the Automobile. And I know I love the history, but I love the history because I love the future. I love to learn from the past to create something different. And first of all, I would like to thank you for this space. If you have any questions about this, I have to say that before going to the questions, I wanted just to tell you something. I never went to Mexico. but I have some friends and some good colleagues. And I want to tell you this story. We have right now 2 teachers who are from Mexico here in Torino, in Via di Torino. And for us, it's great to have this opportunity of exchange of culture. We have teachers from Greece, Israel, Moldova, China, Japan, because I think that design right now is international. And even to design something like an Italian car, you can be really from wherever you want. The most important thing is that you get the essence, the philosophy of the brand and the strategy that you want to apply. And also, I'm very proud of saying that one of my former students, studied here, was my student, this year became a teacher after being the first guy hired by the new Jeep Style Center that they opened here in Torino. And the first guy to be hired was this Mexican guy that was my student. He is a lovely guy, was a very lovely student. And this is how, for example, things might happen. You might be a Mexican guy that goes to Torino to design an American car. Because the important thing is to be clever, to be smart, and to push the boundaries. And of course, to learn, of course, the technique which is required to be a good designer. But other than that, you don't need anything else.
Thank you so much, Michele. So, I mean, the people here in the webinar are going crazy because your presentation, it's amazing, and they have a lot of questions.
Oh, I'm checking. Oh.
But first, I would like to announce, a giveaway we're doing based on one of our sponsors. So let me switch to Spanish to announce it. Chicos, todos los que estén ahorita en la llamada, por favor, chequen el chat. Estamos hoy, se va a rifar un perfume Seña para hombre. La dinámica es que tienen que llenar un formulario que Tania Tobar les acaba de escribir en el chat. Así que, por favor, corran. Lo que pasamos a las preguntas y respuestas, ustedes pueden estar llenando el formulario y luego vamos a anunciar al ganador al final del webinar. Fariba, ¿tienes algo que presentar ahorita?
Okay. Muchas gracias por todo lo que escribe. Porque estoy leyendo lo que... Gracias a todos. There is a question. How does Lamborghini? Yes, right now, of course, I would say that Lamborghini will have to face, they already faced it with the Sian and with the Countach because it's the same engine, the hybrid change. I would say that hybrid doesn't require such a huge change in design because still the engine has to be cooled. They made a prototype which wasn't moving a few years ago, called Terzo Millennio, that was supposed to be an electric car. Well, actually, we haven't seen a real electric car from Lamborghini. I would say that we have to expect electric cars from everybody. My clients, for example, are all asking me electric motorcycles or electric cars. I would say really all of them. Almost nobody is asking anymore to design endothermic vehicles, or just a few. And I would say that still we have to find a way to make these objects look electric, because I think that the object has to communicate through the design its mechanical essence. A few years ago, a designer that now passed away, Tom Ciarda from Pininfarina, Ghia, etc., it was the designer of the Tommaso Pantera, just to name one car, or the Fiat 124, and a couple of Ferraris, told me that a car has to express its mechanic through the design. And I think that it's fantastic because design speaks to everybody and it speaks instantly to everybody. If you make a line like this with two wheels and you show it to a kid who's passionate, even if he's 5, he would say, yes, it's a Lamborghini because it's got this Wedge Design that was invented in 1971. Or if you paint it red and you make it sinuous, and you can remove all the logos, and another kid of 5 years old will tell you it's a Ferrari. Because sometimes it's about it. When I was a kid, I really started loving these sports cars. At the beginning, I was a fan of Ferrari, then I became a fan of Lamborghini. And I only wanted Testarossa models because it was something that I could recognize even from afar because of the stripes on the side. It was really something different for me. When I saw the first one on the highway, I asked my father what it was. And my father was never into cars. So it took a while to understand which car was, said it's a Ferrari. And from the day I wanted only models of Ferrari. I have 5 Testarossa just for me when I was 4 or 5 years old. And I would say that, yes, we have to find a signature that can express this difference. Right now we're working a lot in the design to find a new way to express electrification, and sometimes also the new future, which can be also the hydrogen again.
Yeah, that's perfect. Let me go to the very first question we got, because people were doing questions even at the start of the webinar.
Okay.
So the first question is from Marjane Vargas, and she asked, how does the car design change to adapt to different markets around the world, or does it maintain the same?
Well, first of all, I have to say that the best characteristic of a designer is to be paying attention. You have to develop a certain sensibility and study. Study doesn't mean that you have to open a book and study everything which is written. Instead, you have to be curious, you have to go around. I don't know if you ever went to China, but if you have to design for China, well, we have to stay there at least 1 week to see not just the cars, how they're done, but the towns, the architecture, the graphics, the shops. Everything speaks a language. Everything has a taste. And there's no a correct taste and a wrong taste. We cannot say that, for example, the Italian taste is better or worse than any other, the Chinese one, etc., etc. It's simply different. If you have to design for Russia, well, you have to design in different way, unlike you do, for example, for an Italian brand. And sometimes I have to tell you, one of my closest friends, because we studied together, is now chief designer of Maserati. He's a French guy, and his first famous work was a car designed to be an Italian car for the American market. There was the Levante, because it was designed for America, for the US and for China a little bit. So it is strange because a French guy made a proposal for an Italian car for the Chinese market and the American market. So yes, you have to develop a certain sensibility, not to be closed mentally, and to be ready to explore.
Yeah, it's not that it is better than the other one, but it is better for the market.
Yes, it has to be, exactly, it has to be correct for the market. There is not a certain beauty. It's like there is not a standard of beauty or a standard of proportions. You have to understand which are the needs, which is the background culture. Even the architecture that we see around is different. If you go to, I don't know, post-Soviet Russia, you cannot think about having the same, even if you're an architect, you cannot think about designing a building like you could design it in Mexico City, because it doesn't fit, it simply doesn't work there. Or I'm working a lot with India. I have to dig into their taste. And trust me, it's not easy, because I've been to India a few, but getting inside their taste, getting inside their culture, their history, really requires a lot of sensibility and time and respect for what they did.
You know, this, you know, your presentation gives like a huge, you know, different perspective on creativity, you know, because all the webinars we have presented here at Encuentro Creativo are based on design and creativity and you know, but this is the one, you know, focused on cars, on automobiles, because we had a lot of webinars on fashion or interiorism, on object design. And one of our, you know, one of the presenters mentioned that designers get frustrated a lot because they can create something new, but the key to delve into creative fields is not to maybe create something new, but to innovate. And I see that this happen a lot with the car design, because cars are already there. You can only just innovate their features.
Exactly. I think there is a difference between an inventor and a designer. Sometimes a designer can be an inventor, but sometimes maybe just taking a little step forward can already be enough. Okay, so we don't have, of course, every time to reinvent the history. This was probably the most amazing experiment of success in the car industry by the design point of view. But of course, if I could live 2000 years, I would never been able to do something like Gandini did. But I have to say, even taking a little step forward or try to do something that hasn't been experimented, even something little, is what we have to do as designers.
Yes. And on that note, Ana Astorga asks, does design go before engineering and mechanism, or the other way around? Or do they go hand in hand?
It depends. It depends. I have to say that a few years ago, I would have said that, first of all, it's the design. But right now, design, we understood the importance, again, of design to sell cars, which is also very important. We have to respect the market. There are three pillars: engineering, design, and another thing is business. Okay, so also the product development, the product positioning, the three of them have to work together. Sometimes some companies prefer to go, I don't know, even right now I'm developing an electric scooter for India and Nepal, and they wanted to have the sketches before having the chassis. They developed the chassis according to the sketches. So sometimes the engineering can come later. It's kind of rare, I would say, but they understood that this is a new company, so we want a strong image. We want to be different from the others, but we want to go there. So sometimes, usually you have a package which is defined, an engineering platform and everything, and you have to respect those limits. Sometimes it might be the opposite.
So Ana Grisel, she doesn't have a question, but she has a very sweet comment, and she said, this has been a very interesting trip through history with these two design enthusiasts, car design enthusiasts, and how their confrontations led them to create two of the most iconic brands, like in the history of brands, not only just cars. And how competition is positive, right?
Yeah, if it's positive, it's fantastic. Rivalry sometimes can create amazing things. I don't know if you like football, guys, but think about also at the rivalry between Messi, Ronaldo, and Real Madrid and Barcelona. When that thing finished, those teams went down. It is the same thing that happens in a lot of fields. A good competition that needs to really always step forward or surpass your competitor is always good and might be appreciated. I think that is sometimes it can happen.
So Alan Espinosa asked, well, first he says, thank you so much for such a great and illustrative and enriching presentation. And then he asks, I wonder, how does Lamborghini design, the outwear design, adjust to the engine evolution?
This is something that probably I partially answered before. I want to say that the difference would be the electric. The difference would be the electric version. We haven't seen a real electric marching prototype or vehicle from Lamborghini. I would say that we have to understand also other things. We are going towards electric. Everyone is going towards electric. Right now, I'm driving an electric hybrid plug-in car, and I think that we have a problem we are facing totally different problems now. So the problems will cause solutions. Maybe the solutions can involve new materials. the new materials can involve new limitations, but also sometimes new languages. I want to make you another example that it's not connected 100%. I think everybody knows the Dmc Delorean from the movie Back to the Future. I think everybody knows the car. It's been designed by Giugiaro. Well, the car is not painted. It's inox. It's stainless steel. Okay? Because it was done for one reason. That was a new brand, and they didn't have a painting line. They didn't have a painting possibilities. So they decided, why? Let's not paint it. Let's try with stainless steel. And they tried with the press, and it worked. So Giugiaro had to design completely flat surfaces, except for some stronger edges, to design according to a new material. I think that, yes, sometimes design is also stimulated by the limitations. The limitation of a huge battery, the limitations of not having a grill anymore, who knows? So we have to say that we are going in too many directions with the electric engine. If you see what some brands are doing, they're doing still the same thing. Look at the 500, the 500 Fiat, still looks like the other one, or look like what the Model X is about. It's something unseen. It's a 7-seater. It doesn't look like an SUV. It should be an SUV. It looks more like an MPV. It depends. I think the answer is not there, and people who are more talented than me and have more budget and time than me still haven't found an answer. But I think that it's maybe your turn, because as younger generation, maybe you will be the ones to find the answer. We try to suggest some solutions, some roads to take, but it's actually to you.
Yeah. So everyone's saying thanks for everything. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Thanks. Even Nadia Paz says, Michele, you can come to Mexico anytime. Bienvenuto. Anytime. So our last question here comes from Mariana Serrano, and she says, what would be your advice for someone that wants to begin a path in such a competitive area, automobile design? You know, you can give just one advice.
Be curious is the most important thing. Be curious. Try to be where the things happen and get informed and try to collect some skills. If you have other questions, also for the future, if you need, I would be happy to answer them, because also, if you want, I can leave my email, because sometimes maybe some answers.
Yes,
some
maybe
questions.
leave your email in the chat. You can click.
Yeah, why not? I leave the one of the studio I work for. It's not .it because it's not Italy, it's India, because I work for this Indian studio. It's Michele at studio34.in.
Perfect. So if anyone has another question, they can write you there, right?
Yeah, anytime. I'm always happy to. Don't be shy. I mean, it's always good. And another thing that I can suggest, other than be curious, also don't be shy. Try to ask people, try to connect with people. It's very important. And if you get the chance to talk to somebody who is in a good position or already experienced, I think it's always good. I had the chance to really meet a lot of people that really helped me through my career, and I did it. What I did was also thanks to the fact that I got in contact with them. Right now, I'm working a lot with Pininfarina, because also I had the chance to talk to the new director of Pininfarina, and I'm working a lot for them, simply because we met.
Perfect. So they are already seeing that they'll reach out to you via email. So before ending the webinar, we would like to present a video testimony of someone who studied at YEP. So Fariba.
Sí, gracias Arturo, gracias Michele. Si quieren vamos a hacer pasar este video de este embajador, de este estudiante mexicano que estuvo allá con ustedes en YED estudiando para conocer un poquito su experiencia y después cerramos con este webinar.
Chao, Encuentro Creativo. Es un placer estar aquí y poder compartir mi experiencia en Italia. Mi nombre es Ricardo Ramos, soy de México y realicé mis estudios en la ciudad de Milán. Hoy trabajo en Nueva York como director de estrategia en Made in Itaca, agencia de consultoría con sede en Milán. Obtuve el Master's Degree en Brand Management and Communication, además del título trienal en Comunicación, PR y Eventos del Instituto Europeo de Design en Milán. El haber elegido tener mi experiencia académica en Italia ha brindado grandes oportunidades a mi carrera. Hablar italiano, poder interpretar el Made in Italy a mercados internacionales. De hecho, hoy trabajo en estrategias de branding para marcas italianas, como Ferrari, Barilla, San Pellegrino, Frescobaldi Wines. Mis estudios en IED Milán me han brindado el know-how académico de design storytelling, de descripción de conceptos y ejecución de estrategias creativas. Una mezcla entre la importancia de la estética, el estilo y estructura metodológica del design. Cada clase, proyecto y examen son lo más parecido posible a situaciones de trabajo. Si estás interesado en el mercado del business de la creatividad, es mi gran recomendación que estudies en Italia, el país del design, la moda y las tendencias de comunicación de vanguardia. Así que seguramente nos veremos en Italia. Chao, chao.
Pues muchísimas gracias, Michele, muchísimas gracias a Yed por ser parte de este encuentro creativo. Chicos, yo creo que este es uno de los temas, el diseño en automóviles es uno de los temas que ya muchos estudiantes en pasado nos habían preguntado, habíamos hecho algunas actividades, yo creo que hay bastantes diseñadores que están estudiando, que quieren dedicarse a esta industria. Entonces, pues ya lo dijo Michele, ya dio sus consejos, también aquí nuestro embajador y la Cámara Italiana, que los invita a rebasar fronteras, a ir a Italia, que es la cuna del diseño, de la moda, y pues experimentar y traer todo ese know-how que ellos tienen y nosotros podemos replicar porque tenemos una gran creatividad. Así que por favor, chicos, aprovechen también la beca, métanse para ver si pueden ganarse esta beca. Y ayer se estuvo hablando acerca de las posibilidades, de los créditos que pueden obtener también ustedes si los recursos a veces económicos no alcanzan, o sea que no hay límites, ¿no? Si uno quiere hacerlo, se puede. Entonces, por favor, los invitamos también a revisar esto, a acercarse a nosotros para cuestiones legales, de visas, etcétera. Entonces, yo les agradezco muchísimo. Michele, muchísimas gracias por tu presentación.
Gracias a todos.
Te vamos a estar buscando más adelante a través de YED para más encuentros de esta industria tan interesante y que gusta muchísimo. No me queda más que agradecerles. Nos vemos en la siguiente sesión. Ya estamos cerrando con Encuentro Creativo. Ya nada más nos queda el día de mañana y el resto de hoy. Quiero agradecer a la Embajada de Italia, a nuestros patrocinadores, Fénix, Zegna, Yamamay, Scavolini, Alfa Parf, Ferrero, Amoretti Brothers, Vialetti, Campari, Ferrari, San Pellegrino, Capricho, Secretos del Vino, Riedel y Grupo Berlingo, por formar parte de esta primera edición. Y por ahí creo que Claudia o Valentina nos tiene que decir quién ganó este perfume, ¿verdad? Para ya cerrar la sesión.
Lo voy a anunciar yo, creo.
Ok.
Sí, pues queremos felicitar a Ana Laura Palafox, que ha ganado el perfume Seña. Muchas gracias por tu participación. Y pues estaremos poniéndonos en contacto contigo para saber cómo te lo podemos entregar y cómo puedes recogerlo.
Perfecto, pues muchísimas gracias a Yed y a Michele. Nos vemos al ratito, a la próxima.
Gracias a todos. Bye.
Chao, chao, chao.